I'm Kevin Ranke, and I'd like to welcome you to Beyond the Echo. I ran for governor in Michigan. After losing that election, my desire to look at issues that are important to the state or the country grew. There is so much static. There are so many opinions. Our news stations have gotten to the point where we don't know what news is anymore. Where do you go to get real facts? This is about real perspective for you. Beyond the Echo will cut through all the smoke, all the opinions. It's not about Republicans. It's not about Democrats. It's about the issues and what are real. Hello, this is Kevin Ranke, and this is Beyond the Echo. Today, we are going to have a conversation with the United States Secret Service agent. Truly, in my view, an American hero. He served in our government for over 40 years. He was part of the Secret Service detail that protected President Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. And he has also served in the capacity with the Federal Air Marshals after he left the Secret Service. And I'd like to introduce John to you today. We're going to leave his last name out for security purposes, but that doesn't mitigate his experience or his ability to share with us a great story of service and patriotism to the country, as well as his insights and observations about the Secret Service during the Reagan era. And he might even have a few things to say about the Secret Service and the recent assassination attempt on President Trump. So, John, how are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate you taking the time to appear on Beyond the Echo. The goal of this podcast is to have subject matter experts talk about their experiences and the subjects that are current in today's world, and to share with people facts. Because with social media and all the news media, they have editorialized everything, and real hard facts are hard to come by. So it's a pleasure to have you. If you would, why don't you start out by telling us about how you became involved with the Secret Service and lead us right into the Reagan years, and I'll ask questions along the way if you're good with that.
Sounds great. A little bit of my background. I was actually an infantry officer in the Army when I first applied to the Secret Service. That process took about a year and a half, going through the various stages of physical fitness, a medical checkup, as well as security background. And what actually prompted my hiring was the assassination attempt on President Reagan. As a direct result of that, I was hired in the summer of 1981 and immediately went to FLETC, the Treasury Training School down in Georgia. And from there, actually transitioned onto the Reagan detail in 1985 and stayed there until 1989, when I actually flew with President Reagan on Air Force One, the same Air Force One that's located at his museum and library in Simi Valley, and transitioned with him into retirement, and then remained with the Secret Service for a total of 21 years. At that point, we had another tragedy, 9/11, the terrorist attack on our country, and I was hired as a supervisor with the Federal Air Marshals. And I've been with them for the past 20 years. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, my background.
Tell us about what it was like as a Secret Service agent with what's the term for the person you're protecting? An asset or?
Well, protectee is how we, the term that we use amongst ourselves, whether it's a foreign dignitary, president, vice president, first lady, any other dignitaries that we are assigned to provide protection for. One of the this little side notes is when the President Reagan Library and Museum opened out here in Simi Valley. I was actually with Secretary Benson in Moscow, so I missed the opener, but I've been a member since the beginning. And protectee is a term that we use among ourselves. Obviously, when we're with the protectees, it's Mr. President, First Lady, foreign dignitaries, based on whether they're a prime minister, president, emir.
Sure. What does it look like? Is it a violation of security protocols to say how many people would be part of a presidential detail to protect the president and the first lady? What's a day look like for a Secret Service agent in that capacity?
Well, it always fluctuates. Typically, there are 3 shifts: a day shift, evening, and a midnight shift. And depending on whether the president and first lady are staying at the White House, that would determine what the numbers are going to be. And that would certainly increase as they travel around the country or foreign.
Sure. Would you be housed at the White House? Would you actually sleep there? Did they have facilities for the agents?
No, it's we'd have our own private residences in the usually within the district or Virginia, Maryland, and you would commute every day to and from.
That's a pretty good address to commute to, I would think.
Oh, absolutely! It's a lot of pride every day that you were coming to work. You knew that you were making a difference, and my being a history major, that was a huge part of. It was kind of pinch yourself on a regular basis to remind yourself of just the historical impact you're making.
It seems like if you were new to the agency, that you must have been identified as a bit of a rock star to come out of training and to be assigned to a presidential detail. And I think that people would find it interesting. Your training consisted of obviously a whole bunch of different areas, but would you briefly describe, the training that prepared you to protect?
As I mentioned earlier, when initially hired, there's a period where you're assigned to a field office, and you go out and you work cases, investigations, as well as some protective details under supervision with senior agents. And usually after a couple of months, you would go down to Georgia to the Treasury Training School. And I was down there for 10 weeks, finished up there, went back to the field office, and I should go back to the Treasury School. It's very basic, a lot of administrative law. There are, you're at the firing range every day. You have physical fitness a couple times a day, where it's obstacle courses, you're running, push-ups, sit-ups, different types of courses to kind of test your mentality. Actually, quite similar to being an infantry officer. So I felt I had a leg up in that training. And then I went back to the field office, and then came back to Washington, D.C., and we would train. I guess it was back then. It was 1310 L Street was the training center. But then we would go out to Beltsville for a lot of physical fitness, a whole lot more shooting.
What types of weapons did they train you to shoot?
At that time, we had the Uzi, the shotgun, and the revolver.
Interesting. One of the things that I noticed in the film of the Trump assassination attempt, and it surprised me, was that the agents surrounding the stage all had handguns, and that support members in black ops uniforms came up with the automatic weapons, versus when President Reagan was shot. I specifically recall agents exposing their automatic weapons, Uzis to be specific, from concealment underneath their suits. Has that been a change in how the Secret Service operates, or?
Well, part of the changes are, the counter sniper team, which is staffed by the uniform division of Secret Service. They've always been a constant. Typically, with presidential visits, that's now expanded with the campaign coverage, and I'm sure based on intelligence that, as we found out after the fact, that there was a Iranian threat out there. The other people that are in the more SWAT type of ensemble, that's the counter assault team that are assigned to the major candidates, major protectees. But I'm sure that there were members of the permanent protective detail that also have automatic weapons. They just weren't the first people up on the stage.
Got it. How many different teams would the Secret Service deploy for an event like President Trump had? If you wouldn't mind, because I didn't realize that there were multiple different designations of teams. I had worked directly for ex-President Ford at one period of time and had exposure to the Secret Service, obviously. Yet I never cognitively recognized that they weren't just one unit with each member having a specific role. So this is interesting to me, and I think our viewers would be interested. What are the teams that go into a presidential protection unit for a public event like that?
For a public event, especially outdoors, that's probably one of the more dangerous situations to be on an outdoor stage. You're obviously required to cover a lot of high ground. Thus, the counter sniper teams will come in. As I mentioned, they're the part of the uniform Secret Service that also provide protection of the White House grounds. And they are specifically selected for their shooting ability. And they, you better believe every day they're out zeroing in those weapons and becoming more proficient. The counter assault team are made up of Secret Service agents, and the majority have already been on the presidential detail, vice presidential detail, and they'll rotate through that assignment. And their responsibility is, for any type of a organized assault. So when they came up on stage to help the evacuation, and also, to provide more cover, for President Trump.
Yeah, I noticed that there were people in black uniforms, and there were also people that entered the scene in camouflage. Were they all part of the counter assault team, or were they different teams that were now functioning together to protect President Trump?
Yeah, I think I know what you're referring to, and I believe that the people in the camouflage uniforms were local police. I believe. I think they're probably a local SWAT team.
Got it. Does the government mandate, or does the agency mandate the types of weapons or caliber of weapons that are available to you to protect the president?
Oh yes, that's they need to be approved, and they're tested by the training division. And when we transitioned from the revolver to the Sig Sauer 9mm, that was very intensive training. They test fired those weapons out at Beltsville for an extended period of time. Had their armorers have various tests to make sure that this was a properly functioning weapon, and it finally was signed off on. And I believe that so we transitioned to the SIG. We had the Uzi submachine gun, and then right near the end of my 21 years with the Secret Service, they were transitioning to another automatic long gun. I believe it was the MP5. I'm not positive though.
Interesting. And the long guns that they use are in what caliber?
As far as the counter sniper, I'm not sure.
Got it. There was talk about a 308. You hear a lot of talk in the military about a 338 Lapua. Some pretty interesting rounds, a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 7 short action Magnum. All great rounds, all lethal. And my friends on the teams have the luxury of choosing the weapons that they prefer versus having a specific weapon assigned to them. There's a cadre of weapons that they can choose from that fit their various missions.
And that, with the counter assault team, if I remember, the counter sniper teams, a lot of those members, they build with the armors a weapon that's specific to what their needs are.
Ah, okay. Great.
Depending on what height, weight, what they feel more comfortable with, what they can shoot more accurately with.
Sure. Would you take a moment and describe the process that goes into a presidential or a high profile visit for people to understand the lead time, the planning, how that plan is communicated through the various teams, and how it is applied on the day of a visit for us?
Yes, and I know that having been on President Reagan's detail, we had a schedule of pretty firm events 6 to 9 months out that his staff was planning on his attending, which was, on Secret Service point of view, that's wonderful. I'm assuming based on my experience with the presidential campaigns every 4 years, you just don't have that luxury. Sometimes the events, might not be selected by staff until a week or two prior. And then normally you have the permanent detail that's with protectee, but that it's up to the local field office to actually conduct the protective advance. And I believe in the case of with Butler that it was the Pittsburgh field office, but I'm not positive.
Got it.
So that would be could be a couple of weeks out. I kind of had the impression that event had been planned longer than that. I'm not certain, but that the staff would come out, they would meet with local politicians, other people that were putting the event together, and then working with the local field office of Secret Service, they would go out and take a look at the site. They would set up security barriers. You'd have the inner, middle, and outer perimeter that would need to be covered. They would bring in the uniform division with their magnetometers that they would need to set up to make sure that an event with the president, with a major candidate like President Trump, that everybody that is going to enter that area would be screened. We also set up barricades and barriers behind the stage, just to provide that much more protection. And we also have to keep in mind that the media they want their access. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that with Secret Service, what we would love to do is have the protectee stay in the White House and never leave the Oval Office. The reality is the protectee, their staff, the media, and general population. We want to, they want to get out and press the flesh. They want to speak in person. They want to get out and see the people. They want to be seen, and have that interaction. And I think that everybody would agree that you need to do that to get the vote out.
Well, that's America, and it's unique to our country, the access that we have to our politicians. You brought up something, and you talked about various perimeters. How large are those perimeters? And obviously, I'm going to get to, at some point in time in Butler, the shooter penetrated a perimeter. And I'd like to understand the size of the various perimeters to get a better understanding of maybe how this could have broken down in this particular instance, and the resulting, assassination attempt that occurred.
Yeah, and I'll say right up at the top, it was a failure on the part of the Secret Service that individual was able to penetrate that outer perimeter, even though it was not in a secured area where the magnetometers were screening everybody having access to the immediate area of the stage. That outer perimeter, as we've seen, is critical, and 150 yards with a scoped rifle is not a big deal. And that those buildings should have been secured. There should have been, the outer perimeter. Typically what would happen, or in my case, what I've experienced, is that you would have local police would have responsibility for that outer perimeter, but that there would be Secret Service agents with them, either working protective intelligence, where they're looking for suspicious characters, or there are team leaders from the Secret Service that are working with the locals, and in the coordination center, all law enforcement would be represented, but we would also want to have people out there with local law enforcement for that immediate communication. If they see something, to report that immediately and respond.
Yeah, I think that's what's so unique about this particular situation, because it's my belief, okay? And it's just my belief, if there is a one-off out there that wants to kill a protectee, that they've got a pretty good chance of being successful, because the ability for the service to interpret the threat, to predetermine that it even exists. Now, in this case, it was unique because apparently there was an Iranian threat. And that leads to conspiracy theories of, how could a 20-year-old ultimately put themselves in a position to successfully attempt to take the life of an ex-president of the United States. The breakdowns, it's hard because there's physical protection. And in this particular case, we saw that citizens had identified the shooter, had identified that there was a weapon, and it appears on the timelines that not only was there a physical breakdown of personnel, but that the communication channels were not efficient. And, it's almost a domino effect. And it's hard to fathom, because I know several Secret Service agents, and I got to tell you, you guys are all badasses. I mean, you are good people and are heroes just for showing up, knowing that on any given day, you're willing to take a bullet for the person that you're protecting. And we saw that from the Butler PA team. As soon as President Trump went down, there's the accusation that one agent hesitated. And I'm sure you've seen and heard of that. But the rest of the team, they covered up Donald Trump with their own bodies. And had there been additional fire coming in, they would have been hit. Unfortunately, obviously, there were other spectators in the crowd that were wounded, and one lost their life protecting their loved ones. But how do you have, and this is speculation, I get it, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, how do you have so many dominoes fall from the guy being identified, some people saying up to an hour and a half before the event, the guy being identified 11 minutes before the first shot on the roof, the guy being identified again 2 minutes before the first shot on the roof with a weapon. What's going on? I mean, from your view, and I realize you're speculating as to the confusion, the static, what all do you hear if you're an agent on the ground?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and it's inexcusable. You brought up the fact that we've both mentioned about the Iranian threat, so everything should have been heightened. I don't understand why that outer perimeter wasn't better protected. If you have an identifiable threat, I'd want to push those barriers out as far as we possibly could, and provide more obstacles. We've used buses, and we've used heavy equipment trucks to provide more of a barrier, and just to break up any kind of a visual that people might have from a greater distance. But I just don't understand, what the breakdown was, and it's communication. People in the crowd. I know I saw on one of the interviews that there was a gentleman that said, "Yeah, I told local law enforcement 30 minutes ago that this guy's acting kind of weird." Kind of weird is enough to go over and find that person and talk to them. We always had the reminder that on a hot sunny day, you go over and you talk to the person wearing the heavy raincoat,
Sure.
because it just doesn't fit. There's something not right, and especially somebody that at the event. I haven't heard if it was a ticketed event. I don't think it was. I think it was open to the public, and that this person is out wandering around, not trying to enter the event.
Yeah, kind of pacing back and forth the video.
Yeah, we need to go and talk to this person. What's going on.
What do you make about the fact, and I was astounded in yesterday's hearings when Director Cheadle said that the team was aware that this gentleman had a rangefinder in standing outside of the fence by the building, was using the rangefinder to look at the stage, and that she did not think that that warranted further investigation.
Yeah, and I don't know Director Cheadle. I believe she was hired by the Secret Service in about, I think, 1996. I had seen somewhere, which would have been, nearing the end of my career. But with her as a new agent and mine as a more senior and on opposite coasts. But yeah, a rangefinder, kind of odd.
Yeah, I would never imagine. And it floored me that she seemed to indicate that that is a common piece of equipment at rallies like this, that people show up with rangefinders. I do a lot of long range shooting, and rangefinders aren't easy to look into, and they have a specific purpose. From point A to point B, how far, and what are you going to do with your gun to make sure that your bullet hits where you're pointing? It's startling to me.
Yeah, and I think that where I've seen it at rallies or at major events, the media will have, I don't think it's officially a rangefinder, but they want, when setting up their camera shot, they'll want to know what the distance is.
Sure.
I've seen them on golf courses.
Absolutely. Yep.
Somebody outside the secure perimeter, moving in and out, and seeming to be, very obvious that they're using a rangefinder. It's part of with the federal air marshals. That was the big thing when we would provide security at the various airports. We would stress to the public and to the people at the screening stations, have you heard this before? If you see something, say something.
Right.
And now we have members of the public that are saying that that's kind of suspicious.
Sure.
And as law enforcement, we have to take that serious. Otherwise, the public's not going to, oh, well, I guess they don't think it's a big deal, so they'll stop reporting. And that's a losing proposition for law enforcement. We need the public to help us.
This may be a controversial comment, and I'm glad that the shooter had an AR platform versus a bolt action rifle. I don't know what type of optics that the shooter was using. I suspect that it was more a hologram, or for a generalization term, a red dot type of system, which at 150 yards, I believe, is much less accurate than a scoped bolt action rifle. And the public may not be aware of the fact. I mean, I'm a citizen, and I enjoy long range shooting. I shoot out to 2,000 yards in my training. And at 2,000 yards, I can hit a 10-inch pie plate 9 times out of 10 if I'm properly trained. So the fact that we had a shooter get into an area within 150 yards or less, I think, boy, President Trump, or ex-President Trump, was really lucky that this guy selected an AR, which traditionally is more of a short-range weapon. I understand that they say you can shoot 400 to 600 yards, but we can argue that the proficiency at 400 yards or 600 yards with an AR versus a person with a bolt-action sniper rifle, the results are dramatically different. And we saw that, fortunately.
I agree. And my brother, who he took 2 of my daughters to a range so that they could fire some of his weapons. And they have very, I've trained with them with handguns, but I don't believe they've ever shot rifles before. And he took them out cold, and yeah, they were hitting targets with the weapons he was providing at a couple of 100 yards.
Yeah, you speak to practicing, and for all you doubters out there, you can call me offline. But your brother and I were at a long range shooting school where we were hitting golf balls suspended from a string at 1,000 yards.
Oh yeah.
So today's weapons are deadly accurate, and in the hands of someone who is practiced and accomplished at controlling their breathing, their heart rate, that understands the gravitational pull that goes into and windage that goes into making these types of shots, they can be lethal. And I think it's great that in America citizens have access. I fully support the Second Amendment. I think that anyone who calls for the elimination of AR-style weapons based on this event is a coward and that they are uninformed, because ARs look like they're badass, but there are other weapons that are way, way, way more appropriate for that type of scenario. And I just find it interesting. What is the protocol typically for the Secret Service? And I'm going to paint a scenario for you. I don't know that this scenario existed, but I am on the sniper team. Okay. And what's the term for the sniper team that they use? Counter sniper. Okay. And I'm going to make two observations. One, when I saw an overview photograph of the site, there were two spots that if I wanted to shoot the president, that I would have wanted to position myself. One was on the building that the sniper shot from, and the other one would have been on the water tower that was a couple 100 yards behind the building. But the angle of the shot and the elevation of that tower would have seemed to me to be a pretty strategic spot for a sniper that had ill intent. And I don't know if the Secret Service was on that water tower or not. But anyhow, so I'm on the counter sniper team, and I am aware that there is a possible assailant. I'm listening in. There's all sorts of chatter and static. We've seen a guy with a rangefinder. There's a guy up on a roof. There's a guy up on a roof with a weapon. Help me, because it appears from the video that has been made public that these folks had eyes on the shooter prior to a shot being fired. What in the Secret Service is the protocol, or does it vary based on site or protectee for a sniper to proactively engage a threat versus reactively respond to a scenario?
Yeah, my understanding and based on my experience is the counter sniper team in communication with the coordination center. If that information is coming in that there's a suspicious person on the rooftop, and if it was communicated that it appears from some of the audience members, it appears that he has a weapon, that's that counter sniper is going to take that person out. You really can't wait to go through multiple levels of authorization. They've got to make a decision. That's what they're trained for.
So would it imply that there was somewhat of some level of confusion in the chain of command to the on-the-ground folks as to what their authority was to protect ex-President Trump?
Hopefully that'll come out in the investigation. I know that Homeland Security inspectors, the FBI, are all involved. Everyone's being interviewed. uh, in the scenario that I'd read about and heard about, where the local law enforcement officer boosted himself up on the roof to take a look at whoever was on top of the roof. That person on top of the roof turned and pointed the weapon at that officer. Uh, I I'm confused why that wasn't communicated immediately, and that person needs to be taken out.
Yeah, maybe it was. I don't know. It's almost like the communications were on multiple channels, and that would be ultimately a failure because of the time lags between the channels as well. Again, you shake your head, and in today's world, I've seen too many movies where all these conspiracies. What was the one that Mark Wahlberg was in? Shooter, where they were trying to take somebody out, and with the polarizing personality that ex-President Trump has, in the rhetoric that has been directed towards him, boy. I understand how people go to conspiracies, but I'm going on record. I believe in our Secret Service. I believe that people make mistakes. I'm going to make a statement, and I don't know Director Cheadle. And by the way, I don't know if you've heard, she resigned this morning.
Oh, I did not hear. No.
Yeah, she tendered her resignation, I believe at 9 a.m. this morning. And that was appropriate. Good riddance, because when we have a failure as a citizen, and I actually believe that you as an agent, and please, I'm asking you a question, that you're okay with transparency when it comes to improving the agency, because ultimately you're improving the safety of your fellow agents. You're improving the safety of the protectees. I mean, there was a failure, and it's noticeable to everyone. So when she would not answer just the most basic questions, it was really disappointing. And not being prepared to address that congressional hearing appropriately, factually, candidly, warranted her resigning. And I don't say that because somebody took a shot at the president. In my lifetime, there's been 3, actually 4 now, presidential assassination attempts. 2 on President Ford that happened in a 3-week period of time. Back in the day, 1 on Ronald Reagan, which in essence was successful in that the president was, grievously, life-threateningly wounded. And then this one with Donald J. Trump, they were more candid back in the day than Director Cheadle was. And I don't understand that whatsoever. So I think that was a failure of leadership, and that she needed to be replaced. I don't know. Are they going to try and call you out of retirement, John, and see if you'll run the agency?
I can't comment on that. But what I will point out is the motto or slogan for the Secret Service that I dearly embrace is trust and confidence. And that's, you've got to have the trust and confidence of the people around you, the people that work with you, your protectees, the general public. They have to have that trust and confidence. And yeah.
I think it was pretty clear yesterday, based on the language that was used by our congressional representatives, and the directness and the bipartisan directness that was flung at Director Cheadle, that she had violated the trust and the confidence of the agency. A couple more questions, if I could. In today's world, the dynamics of employees are much different than when I was growing up. And you can call it DEI, you can call it, trying to balance the employment through gender as well as race. What do you make of the Secret Service's openly verbalized policy that it was their goal to have 30% or more of the agency be woman agents? And I'm sure there are tremendous female agents that are part of the agency, and I applaud them. I'm not picking on women. I believe that those women are the best of the very best that are deployed as female U.S. Secret Service agents. A lot of questions about the actions of the team in Burton. And I'm curious, what was the level of female participation when you came into the Secret Service 40 years ago?
It was quite, the percentage was quite low. The first female agents weren't hired until 1971. I think it was a class of 5 or 6. In the class that immediately following the assassination attempt on President Reagan, I was part of a class of 34 agents that were sent down to the Treasury School. And off the top of my head, I believe there were 4 females, which at that time was considered a pretty good percentage. And they were tremendous. They, they were not looking for any special favors. One in particular was one of the, had the highest physical fitness of anybody in the class. And they were great shooters. Typically, they'd come up through local police departments and, were very, very adept at handling weapons and great physical fitness. I think that by the time I left the Secret Service in, following 9/11, the numbers were still rather low. I'm not sure what the percentage was, but in my field office, we less than 10 out of a total of 250 agents, so that the number stayed low. Part of it was the recruitment effort. Secret Service, if there was a great candidate, we're battling with the FBI, ATF, other agencies to hire that person. There were also some difficulties with men and women during a typical presidential campaign. You're gone. I remember my first full campaign. I was assigned to Jesse Jackson back in 1983 in November, and I was with him for 9 months, where I was 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And while I was back in the field office, I was in Chicago, which was Mr. Jackson's home base. And so I was securing his residence. I was providing security for his family. We were doing local advances. So essentially, I was with him from Thanksgiving in 1983 through the Democratic Convention in August of 1984. And it takes a toll on families. It's a very difficult type of thing to do, that you have to pick up and go. And there are people that following, presidential campaigns, they decide that that's not really for them.
Yeah, there's no question the Secret Service is a really demanding job. And that's why I think it requires the very best of the best. Again, my rationale for asking was not a shot at women whatsoever. Based on the film, I understand why people question maybe some of the female agents that were there in their actions. But I don't think that I don't think that women should be excluded from presidential details. I just, in my heart of hearts, don't believe that the ladies that were there were the best of the best. And
Yeah, I can't speak to that, but I do know that there are some tremendous female agents that I walking down that dark alley or having them assist me on doing advances or being alongside me on protective details. I was glad they were there.
I'm sure, absolutely.
Especially in our other role outside of protection when we're doing investigations, that you were able to blend in. We're in surveillances, doing undercover. Having a female agent was huge. It was such a great asset, and I'm still in contact with a number of female agents that I worked with.
I think it's great.
Other careers, and they went into private industry or just flat out retired.
See, I don't think a lot of people realize that the Secret Service does undercover work, that they're investigating, that their role is much broader than simply protecting a dignitary or a president or in their family members. And it's interesting. It is a big job. It's a demanding job. I want to finish on one thought. If you were the new director of the Secret Service, what process would you go through to correct the deficiencies that have been or will be identified in Butler? And how would you start to change the atmosphere within the agency? One of the congressional members brought up that in government, out of 47 departments, that under Director Cheadle's leadership, that the Secret Service was ranked 43 out of 47 in an unsatisfactory way. So there's some work to be done we need to support these people. Like I said, I consider you a hero. I consider you a public service servant that is non-political. I believe you, just based on our relationship, that you take your job serious, and it doesn't matter who you're protecting. You're there to do your job, and you're going to do it the same for everyone, or you'd remove yourself from that scenario. But it appears to me that there's a morale issue with the agency. And boy, I want that fixed, because I think that they are key to our federal law enforcement and the credibility that they bring to the public. So if you would, are you comfortable describing maybe some ideas and thoughts and concepts?
The majority of my contact with Secret Service now is through the Alumni Association. Current agents, I would work with them with the Federal Air Marshals, until my retirement, which was just recently. But it's odd that I've heard the same thing with the morale is always an issue. I think that people would like to take another hard look at the promotions, at who's being hired. You touched on that earlier as far as the service indicating that they want to hit certain percentages. I guess I'm one of the believers that you hire the best, and hopefully it will represent the general population. That I'm not that comfortable with, having percentages. The other thing that I think a new director is going to have to take a look at is all of their immediate staff. Are there people in place that have maybe been there too long? People that have, been within the beltway of DC, for their entire career. Maybe they need to get back out into the field, bring some new thinking in, open up more opportunities. And, I'm a huge believer in training. You have to have the best training, and you have to do it consistently, and constantly. It's the one day that you want to take off and take it easy is the day that an opponent is out there, running that extra mile, getting extra range time in. So you've got to be in the top of your game, and it's just a constant battle. So I guess those would be things that are probably more obvious with the new director coming in. I think that
how important is it that a new director be a Secret Service agent? Is it a position with a just great leader that recognized that they weren't a Secret Service agent, that a non-agent could come in and do the right things and improve the agency, in your opinion? Or do they need to be an agent?
I don't think it's a requirement. I think that it's beneficial for the people that are currently employed by the Secret Service, that you want someone coming in that knows your mission, understands, what the problems are, what the positive things are. But could somebody come in from the private sector? Could somebody come in from another agency? Absolutely. There's always going to be that steep learning curve of getting up to speed, attending the briefings, being aware of what the everyday agent puts up with, and you've got to do it. You have to hit the ground running, because there's no down days with the Secret Service, especially in protection.
Right.
And you have dozens of people that are receiving protection that are not only moving around the country domestically, but they're traveling, internationally. And so that's a lot to pick up on.
How did it land on you when they indicated that the current employment level of the Secret Service was 8,000 agents, and that the targeted number was, I believe, the director indicated 9,500? That would imply that they are 18% roughly deficient from a hiring perspective. That's got to put tremendous strain on the resource for all of the responsibility that you just described.
Yeah. I will point out, I don't have the exact figures, but when I was hired in 1981, I believe there were 800 special agents in the Secret Service.
And now there's 8,000.
And I'm not sure if that number includes uniform division, people in protective intelligence. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what the number included also. Last thing I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you giving us a clearer vision of the Secret Service, their responsibilities, their roles, how they interact. Who hires the director of the Secret Service?
Well, that would be the Homeland Security Secretary would be part of that process, would have the final say, as well as the president.
So the president's directly involved.
It also needs congressional approval, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to find out. Obviously there's a lot of conversation about it's Mayorkas, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that it also needs, I'll bet you dinner that there's a congressional committee that also has to approve the director because, as a senior executive.
I'm going to take you up on that bet just because I want to have dinner with you. And I'm even coming out to Cine. I'll tell the folks that are watching the podcast, I had the pleasure of John taking his brother and myself on a behind-the-scenes tour at the Reagan Presidential Library in Cine, California. And if you ever get the opportunity to go to a presidential library, I encourage you to do so. If you ever get the opportunity to go to Cine and see the Reagan Library, it is fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And I'm forever grateful. I will never forget the day that we spent together and the behind the scenes tour that you provided to myself and Jeff. So I want to thank you, John, for your time. I reserve the right to call you back and ask more questions. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
One more thing I was going to add real quick, based on our conversation last week. This Thursday, July 25th, Dennis Quaid, other cast members, and the production team for the movie Reagan, which is coming out August 30th, they're giving a presentation at President Reagan's Museum and Library, I believe at 6 or 7 o'clock. And there's a dinner included. I unfortunately have other plans. I had just found out about it, I think the day after you and I spoke, but they're going to be showing parts of the movie.
Wow. Well, I hope that the news covers that. I was actually even hoping more that you were inviting me because I was going to get on an airplane to go to that dinner with you. But appreciate that. And I'm looking forward. Dennis Quaid's a great actor. And to play Ronald Reagan, at least in my mind, is a really difficult role because that man was something special.
Absolutely.
What a great guy.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Yep. Well, listen, thank you for your service. God bless you and your family. God bless America. And I sure hope that the Secret Service gets things straightened out and that we get a new director that can up the morale and fix these problems, because in this crazy world that we're living, these types of issues probably aren't going to go away anytime soon.
No. Well, God bless you, and get out there and vote.
You bet. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon.